Hello and welcome to the debut episode of the Dr Dionne Show on Business RadioX, where you can listen to smart dialogue about diversity, leadership, and behavior in the workplace and beyond. We are broadcasting live from the Gwinnett Business RadioX studio in Duluth, Georgia. My name is Dr Dionne Wright Poulton, and I'm here with executive producer Mike Salmon and producers Trey and Z. Thank you much for your assistance today. I'm also joined by three guests. First is Miss Lori Brickman, who is the NAMI GA-CIT coordinator and mental health advocate, and we'll be explaining those acronyms shortly. Next is Miss Kasia Gold. She's a NAMI member, a fashion designer, and spoken word artist, originally from Baltimore. And Captain Jay Eisner will be joining us as well. He is a commander of the Special Victims Unit of the DeKalb County Police Department. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, let's just a quick reminder that our show airs live on the second Friday of each month at 10 a.m., but you can listen to any of our previous shows anytime visiting GwinnettBusinessRadioX.com. So let's start with Lori. Can you just explain a little more about yourself?
First, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to get together with you this morning.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. A little bit about me. I am a NAMI member myself. I'm the mother of two adult children, daughter and son, and I am a NAMI advocate and CIT Crisis Intervention Team Training Coordinator.
Can you explain what NAMI is? That's an acronym for what?
Yes, this is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI is a national grassroots organization, the largest grassroots organization serving individuals and families who are dealing with mental health challenges. We have affiliates throughout the country. In Georgia, NAMI Georgia, NAMIGA.org is our organization. I myself am a member of NAMI Northside. That is the area in which I live. We have affiliates throughout. So our goal is to create awareness for and advocacy for, research for mental health and disabilities, and anything we can do to increase the awareness for that, that's what we do.
Great, thank you. Captain Eisner, can you continue a little more about yourself?
Sure. I'm a DeKalb County police officer. I've been there 25. My wife has been there 28. I was about to take her credit. I am currently in charge of our Special Victims Unit. I am also a facilitator doing the 40-hour trainings for the Crisis Intervention Team. I have a lot of experience on the road with people suffering from mental illness. I also have experiences in my own life and my family. And that's one of the things I really think is important, is that there's no one who's not touched by this. And that's why it's so important that we give officers the tools they need to help people, and often what is their worst day.
So I'll just clarify. So the CIT unit, so the whole purpose of it, or the objective, is to train officers in approaching people with episodes or situations and looking at them not as criminals per se, but as possible people with mental illnesses, to kind of look at it through a different lens. Is that the purpose of the CIT training? Absolutely.
And you mentioned a unit, but really the concept is not a unit, but that all officers need this training, because there's no officer who isn't going to come across regularly people who are suffering from mental illness, because those situations can create crises where officers are going to respond. We want them to have the skills to identify what's going on so that they respond appropriately.
Yes, and this is a collaborative effort between the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, and NAMI.
Great. So Kasia, I would love to hear more about you, and also maybe share your story about how you got involved with this and how this program has impacted your life.
Sure. I'm a member of NAMI, and I'm in our own voice presenter, so I go around sharing my story to different types of groups of people. I've done officers, I go to psych wards, and just anywhere that people would have me to come share my story. And I just like to use the story of hope and try to fight the stigma and raise more awareness so people can, have a better understanding what it's like to have a mental illness. And also the good side of having a mental illness, basically, what I'm trying to say, but I guess I want to use a triumph in it, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
would you want to share what the situation you mentioned in Florida?
Sure. Before I was actually diagnosed. This was around the time that I was diagnosed. I ended up in Florida after crashing my mom's car, and my mom was with me, and she couldn't find me, and she saw me, and I ran, and the police started chasing me in the airport. And so I hopped onto a shuttle bus to try to get away, and so the bus didn't move fast enough. So I hopped off and ran and jumped into like a swamp lagoon to try to get away. And an officer was at the bank trying to, lure me, get me to come in. And I've actually got out of the water and had a kind of like an altercation with about 3 or 4 cops, and I was tussling with them. And I remember that they were trying to put me into the back of the police car, and I wasn't, being compliant. And I remember looking on the other side of the car, and there was another officer there, and he gently nudged me to come, and I came. And so he took me and he rode me to the crisis center in the airport, and I wouldn't talk. So the officers, they were, trying to question me. They were questioning my mother, trying to see what was going on, and I wouldn't say anything. So when that one officer came in, I felt him, and I opened up to him. So he took me around through the airport to get something to eat and things like that, and to change my clothes until my dad was able to come get me. And when I always tell people, like when I share my story, especially with officers, that I remembered his he was really giving me the feeling of like he was my dad. Like I felt safe with him. Not saying I didn't feel safe with the other cops, it was just something special about him that I felt like made me really comfortable. He was really gentle. He was like an angelic kind of presence about him, and it made me feel really comfortable, like I was safe in his arms. And I always just say, like, this cop really he made me feel like he was my dad at that moment. And he did call, like, once my dad came to pick me up from Florida, and then after that I went and got checked into the psych ward. But he did check on me, called my dad a couple times afterwards. And I wish that I could find this guy. Don't remember what his name was, but I remember he wore glasses. I think he was of like Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. So I wish I could find him to thank him, because like he was like my my hero, So
Beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
So I just want to add some statistics on this matter, and why are we talking about this? According to the NAMI website, I pulled some stats. Approximately 1 in 5 adults in the U.S., that's 43.8 million people, or 18.5%, experience mental illness in a given year. Approximately 1 in 25 adults in the U.S., that's 10 million people, or 4.2%, experience a serious mental illness in a given year that substantially interferes with or limits one of their major life activities, and that would definitely include work. Approximately 1 in 5 youth, aged 13 to 18, 21.4%, experience a severe mental disorder at some point during their life. And for children aged 8 to 15, the estimate is 13%. So these numbers are alarming. And if we assume that these people who suffer from mental illnesses are just in shelters or on the streets, they're in our workplaces. We interact with them on a regular basis, and we have to all join in and show compassion for them. And if they say 1 in 5, that means there are how many people in this room here? There's 6 people in this room here, which means at least one person in here would have something, or close to 2. So I just wanted to go back to your story, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
So it was a police officer who stepped in and showed you compassion.
Yes.
And we have a police officer here as well. And so I just want to kind of just segue to Captain for a second. So what is your biggest challenge? So in that kind of situation, hearing Kasha's experience, that police officer was going to work that day. Mm-hmm. And so in his work environment, he experienced that situation. So what happens with you, Captain Eisner, in terms of going to work every day, and what would happen when you experience that kind of situation? Can you walk us through what kind of training you go through, and what does that entail?
So the challenge is, we're a job where we should be helpers, but we also are trained from the get-go that we're always at risk of being harmed, of being killed, of being murdered. I was just teaching yesterday, and I mentioned about barriers to communication when we're out on the scene, talking about the uniform and everything that attaches to that, good and bad. But I mentioned, okay, so every officer in here, when we talk to people, you automatically are bladed away from them, angled away from them, so that your gun is away from the person you're talking to, because you're taught to constantly understand that someone may try and grab your gun and kill you. So it's a tremendous challenge to open up and be there for someone in the moment who's in a crisis, who needs a father figure, who needs a gentle soul, while also constantly being aware of risk to your safety. And so it's really hard. And so I so touched that you had somebody there who was able to bring that presence that helped you to feel safe. And that's what we strive for. And that's one of the reasons for the 40-hour CIT training, is to help officers understand the stories behind how you ended up where you were that day. That crisis you're in that day is not you. It's not all there is to you, right? It's an outcome of a brain illness that you have.
Yeah.
And you also talked about, Kasia, about the stigma, and that's one of the things I find so frustrating, is that we somehow find like character fault in someone who has a brain illness, that we don't do that to people with any other illness. And it's really frustrating, because pretty sure no one checks in and asks for an illness, but people persevere and work through it, and that's to be admired, that people can persevere through that. So I'm sorry, I think I went a far afield from what you asked.
I think it's fantastic.
So redirect me.
I was just asking about the type of training that you experience, and you did kind of answer the question. You talked about the difficulty in trying to kind of contain a potential threat. Right. Versus showing compassion for somebody, and that's a difficult thing to be in, that kind of experience. And I applaud every police officer who does their jobs, because that's a very difficult thing to think about, your life being taken at any moment, and also having to serve the public. So I completely understand. So
we do have a lot of training. Our training is really advanced in terms of how we try and prepare people for this. Because obviously there's tactical training, there's use of force training, understanding the law and what's appropriate use of force, making decisions in the moment. And like in our department, we've gotten pretty good at that in terms of trying to use real scenario-based training that exposes officers to the stress. We call it stress inoculation. Give you scenarios that stress you to the max, so that when it happens in real life, you've done this before. But at the same time, that doesn't help us with someone who's in a mental health crisis if we don't recognize that's what it is. Now, someone who's in a mental health crisis, who might be delusional, might be seeing things that are terrifying, they may respond violently. And so an officer has to deal with that, but still understand that the moment you've controlled the situation, made it safer, then it's time to bring all the compassion you can to try and help that person who deserves that help. And I'm glad that happened for you.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, our class is not only clinical information. The first day we do have approximately 8 hours of specialists in the mental health field. Teach the officers about things like schizophrenia, personality disorders, mood disorders, Alzheimer's, which is not a mental illness, but it's something else we address. We have 2.5 days, Dionne, of role playing. Our role plays are based on real life scenarios.
Wow.
We do site visits. You could hear a pin drop in the room of some of the site visits we've gone to. The officers are so touched. We've gone to shelters. We've gone to mental health facilities where there are people who are sharing their stories. A couple of weeks ago, we went downtown. A gentleman shared his story of how he had been homeless for 30 years and was now in recovery. And recovery is something we teach, because it doesn't mean that you're cured. It means that you are in a place of hope and opportunity, that you are stable, and the officers are doing an outstanding job. This is why I go out every day and tell people about CIT. A couple of weeks ago, one of the officers in the class I was coordinating, on break, it was probably Wednesday, she raised her hand and she could barely talk and flagged me over to her. I said, "Is it something I said?" She said, "No, I feel horrible." And I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, 3 years ago, I arrested a woman who clearly had schizophrenia. I did not know that until today. I might have ruined her life." I said, "Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me, but where are you today?" I did a little grounding technique I learned. I'm in CIT. And what are we learning? We're learning the signs and symptoms of mental illness and disabilities. Why? So that I can be a better officer in person. And so on Monday, what's going to happen? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to know more than I know today. I said, there you have it.
Awesome. Awesome. You're listening to the Dr. Dionne Show. I'm joined by Miss Lori Brickman, Captain Jay Eisner, and Miss Kasha Gold. Thank you for sharing that. In adult education, there's a concept called critical self-reflection, and the story you just shared, Lori, is an example of what every adult should do: is go back and reflect on a situation that they went through, and maybe they didn't handle it properly, and they may not have an opportunity to go back and fix it. But it's a matter of, okay, you know what, I'm going to try and do better the next time, and that is a critical component of being an adult, and just in terms of the work that I do in helping adults to change their perspectives and to realize that, you know what, that sometimes the way you see things is not necessarily the truth, and you have to make adjustments when you get new information that kind of lets you realize that, you know what, you may have been wrong when you handled the situation or thought a certain way.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, a lot of times it's not even forgiving or forgetting. It's letting it go and moving forward. The partnership that we have with the police and the community is so important, and that's wonderful what you just explained. That is probably very accurate for the way a lot of the officers feel once they learn these tools.
So, Lori, you actually shocked me when you said we're doing an outstanding job.
I think
it was
so.
actually a shock because I don't feel that way. And so I real quickly had to kind of go through, why do I feel that way? It's because I'm a facilitator, because I help complete the training for the officers. I'm aware of every time that we fall short of the ideal that we would strive for. And so I don't feel like we do an outstanding job. But then I had to go through and process and realize, and this is true of policing in general, there's 700,000 police officers in this country. Every officer has 10 citizens contacts a day. So if I do the math, that's millions and millions of contacts. We have, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of contacts with people who are mentally ill, and most of them go well. Most of the times we really help the situation, but as a trainer, what I worry about, what I care about is those interactions that don't go well.
Right.
And so that's what I focus on, and I lose sight of the fact of what you just said,
there
that
so
most
many
of the time
stories.
we get it right. And that's probably important for me to take away from this, because you got to remain hopeful in everything you do, right?
Oh, absolutely. So many stories. Just last week, an officer that just got out of training, he texted or emailed me, and he said, I was on patrol, and there's a family. They don't have any furniture. That is not his job description, folks. He said, how can I get them furniture? Can you connect me with the resources we talked about in class? I said, yes, give me 1 hour. I got on my Facebook. In 50 minutes, there were 5 families who had donated furniture.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So I want to go back to your point, Captain. As also a trainer of diversity, one thing that I try to do is not measure, the efficacy of my message or my training by that one situation or one training, because sometimes when you deliver information, that person may get it right away. It may take them 2 weeks. It may take them 2 years. It may take them 5 years. Something may have to happen to them to make them realize, hey, that's what she was talking about. That's what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I really, really try to do is just give the information and just be kind of a vessel to kind of disseminate the information. And then hopefully if someone learns something, then that is a good thing. And to your point, Lori, if they come back and they actually tell you, it is golden. It's amazing. And I think if you get one person that actually circles back to say that to you, it's fantastic. Yeah. And clearly you're doing a fantastic job, because Kasha would not be sitting right here as well.
That's true.
She has made such a difference in our students' lives. We could spend a week talking about the impact that you have on officers.
Wow.
I had an officer that said, on Monday, I'm not going to be just a better cop. I'm going to be a better person.
Awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. when I share my story and with everybody, and then since we're on the topic with cops, I definitely feel like it makes me feel good to be able to be open about it and have an experience that I actually made it out of to share, so I'm thankful.
And we're thankful for you.
Mm-hmm. And where are you today? Can you tell us what you're doing today?
You mean
just in general, like emotionally and professionally? You look amazing.
Thank you. I'm wearing one of my creations, well, two of my creations, the dress and earrings. I am planning this fashion show called the Green and Jean Fashion Show, and it's benefit for NAMI. I'm donating proceeds to NAMI, and the green represents the green ribbon for mental illness. Like your breast cancer has the pink ribbon. For mental health, it's the green ribbon. So I'm asking everyone to come wearing their jeans and anything green. I've been sewing away, just sewing and sewing and sewing. So just getting ready, prepared for that. And I just released a CD. It's actually not available online yet. It'll be available by next week. But it's a CD called Resilience, and it's a collection of my poetry that I've written and recited. Some of it has music behind it, but it's about my experience with mental health, mental illness. And I was diagnosed with bipolar. So that's what I've been working on, and it's been, keeping me really busy. So I'm excited, though. I'm really excited. So I hope that if anybody's interested in coming to the show, it's October the 1st at Hobie Studios. Hobie is spelled Hobi, and it's near Grant Park in Atlanta, Georgia. And you can get tickets on Eventbrite and just search Green and Jean, and it's Atlanta, Georgia. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So what do you attribute your recovery to? What was the pivotal moment for you, or person, thing, entity? What changed for you?
It's my faith in God. My faith in God. I pray, and also I can say that my artistic talents have helped me, because I've used that as a form of healing for myself and for a form of coping also. But just in between my prayer and my faith in God and my artistic capabilities, that's what's been keeping me going. And also just recently I've begun to share more and more. I've been a member of NAMI since 2011, back when I was in Baltimore, and I just began sharing down here in Atlanta, and just opening up about it is amazing. I mean, it took, when I first was diagnosed, I went into a shell. I was always that bubbly, outgoing person. And when I found out I had bipolar, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And it took me some time and patience with myself and my journey to be able to come to this point where I can actually stand up and not be fearful and share just what I've been through. And it's an amazing film. Thank you. It's just, it feels, these are happy tears. I'm crying because I'm happy.
We're very proud of you.
A lot of people that have mental illnesses don't want to share because they're afraid of what people will think.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's the tough thing when you are going through something and you can't share because people don't understand, and even family members. Let me get myself together. My dad, he's been there with me a lot through my story. Through my journey. And he recently saw a movie on TV that talked about a young lady that had bipolar. And he called me. He was like, baby girl, I understand. I think I got it, And I try to help him understand even daily his struggles, trying to deal with anxiety. Sometimes I have sleepless nights and get overwhelmed easily. And, just still recovery is ongoing. But I just, just for me to be able to be here to share and be open and go out and share my story and use my artistic gifts and talents to, raise awareness is, I want to be able to give hope to others that are in, that have mental illnesses, to say, I can do this. I can come out and not be afraid. And I always tell people, fearlessness is not being afraid. I believe having fear, being fearless is when you are fearful, but you still courageously march on. Even though you are afraid, it's kind of like walking through a dark tunnel. You see the light and you're scared, but you continue to move forward. That's being fearless. So,
yes,
Yes, ma'am.
She's chosen to swim
Awesome.
Instead of sink.
Absolutely.
The truth is, though, in swimming, it doesn't mean you have to swim alone either.
Yes.
We can get our life preservers out and we can hook them up together and form a team so that we all stay afloat.
Yes.
One of the things I know when we teach the CIT class is that it's an emotional time for the officer in there, because almost every officer in there is touched by mental illness. So, someone in their family, someone they care about themselves, because of depression that can come with the job. And it's really important that all families come away with what you just said, which is an understanding. My experience is sometimes families struggle. They see it as like a personality quirk rather than an illness that you're having to work through.
Like saying, oh, that's just how they are, like that kind of thing.
And they could stop. Like, why didn't she just do it different? And they wouldn't do that with an illness that was some other part of your body. No one looks at someone with heart disease and says, well, you can walk up the stairs, just try harder.
Yes, NAMI makes it very clear that your mental illness does not define you.
Yep, definitely.
And there should be opportunities for recovery for everyone.
Yeah. I wanted to mention, just say something. I encourage whoever is listening that if you know someone that has a mental illness, if a family member that has a mental illness, learn it, find out about it. The negative side of it, or maybe I shouldn't say that, the downside of bipolar is publicized so much that people get scared of what they don't understand or know. And it took me, myself, and my family ever since 2005 when I was diagnosed to learn bipolar, research it, and understand what the symptoms and the signs are, so that you can be able to better understand what it is that mental illness is. And
can you explain, what it is, what bipolar is?
Well, for me, my symptoms are I'm high anxiety. I'm on the manic side. High anxiety. I don't sleep. I lose my appetite. Hallucinations, paranoia. I smell things. I see things, and I have unrealistic thinking. So I have racing thoughts. I'll sometimes start analyzing things that don't make sense. It's just having unrealistic thinking. And it's like being in an unreal world. With thoughts that aren't real. And I think that one thing I can describe, and this hasn't happened to me, but it's kind of like if your mind, if you're having a lot of thoughts in your mind and your mind tells you to do something that may be real, like just throw your trash on your bed, that can be a thought that someone that has bipolar has, and they'll do it because they're relying on their mind, because this is what the driving force is, your mind. So if your mind tells you to do something, it's hard to deny it because that's what you use every day to function. If you have an itch, you scratch it. So it's hard to deny yourself from accepting those unrealistic thoughts in having a bipolar episode or a mental episode. It's hard to deny your mind because you use it. So those are some of the symptoms. And like for me, I know that when I'm going to a certain level of getting into episode, I lose a lot of sleep, and I start to kind of calculate too much, like over analyzing things. And because I remember one time in my home, my apartment, I had a neighbor, and he was like a friendly neighbor, and I could tell he was always, watching, just making sure everybody was okay. And I was having an episode, and it took it to the extreme. I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna come and break into my apartment and try to do something to me. And I was like having anxiety, like freaking out. And my dad had to tell me, no, baby girl, like, no, it's okay. And so just things like that, just things for my symptoms or what it could be.
Right. Okay. Many times the insight is impaired. So we do encourage people to get the support they need.
Yeah,
Go onto the NAMI Georgia website for resources and connections with mental health professionals, and understand that if you had diabetes, you'd take insulin. If someone saw someone on the street clutching their chest, they might think that person is in the midst of a heart attack and get them to a hospital. The purpose originally when we were talking is to get people connected with services. That is one very big objective of crisis intervention team training, to avoid, when possible, incarceration and arrests or worse, so that we don't expect officers to become clinicians by Friday. It's just a matter of, like you said, Dionne, having one takeaway.
Yes.
Awesome.
And NAMI does have classes for family members and have peer-to-peer support and family support groups.
Absolutely.
And it's from family members for people that have a family member that has a mental illness, they have classes where you can go to just get information and learn on how to better be there for your loved one with a mental illness. And if you're out there and you have a mental illness and you may be alone and you feel like you need help or you want to speak to someone, you can reach out to NAMI just to get some support.
And they're free.
Yes.
All classes, everything NAMI does is free.
That's great. And that's actually a segue to my next question, which is how do citizens, what do citizens have to do, or where can they go to get assistance with mental health matters, disabilities, addictive disorders? Captain Eisner, you want to answer that question?
Wow. Actually, I'll Lori,
that's
probably
okay.
good time to give our
NAMI
1-800 number.
NAMIGA.org is the place. In a serious crisis, there is the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. For those who are in DeKalb County, the reason we're training our officers and our community is so if you are in a situation where someone, maybe in Cash's situation, is having a mental health issue at that time, and I can, I know from my own experience as well with family members, if you must call 911, you want to ask for a CIT officer. That is someone who has gone through training and has some advanced skills in understanding the situation you're in.
Yeah.
So for Georgia, I do have a number for access to care. It's 1-800-715-4225, 1-800-715-4225. That's the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, and it does allow people to set up mental health appointments 24/7.
Yes, and the NAMI line 770-234-0855.
I wanted to just mention too, just in case there's a piggyback, NAMI does have organizations from state to state. So if you're not in Georgia, or the person that you know may not be in Georgia, they have other locations in other cities and states. So you just want to call your local your NAMI office or go to their website.
Thank you.
Great. So in terms of diversity, so this absolutely is a diversity issue because as we're talking about, people say, oh, well, she's just different, or she's crazy, or she's just, and they treat people differently because of who they are. So in terms of diversity, how does it affect your work and also the training?
Well, we actually have an hour module on diversity. One of the, maybe I should be telling this in advance in case some of the officers listen, they'll know what the exercise is about. But one of the exercises we have is to ask the officers to write down on 4 sheets of paper who or what is most important in their life. And we go around and we take some of those things away, and they learn real quick what it's like when something that they're used to is no longer with them and making them feel alone. Mm-hmm. We have opportunities to engage in discussions about, starting very simply, where are y'all all from? We'll go around the room. Where are you from? What does culture mean to you? Is it maybe your police, law enforcement culture? Is it African American culture? They learn from the very basic ways in our early discussions what diversity means to them. And then we move on to more advanced exercises about how they would respond when they're in a situation where a cultural or diverse environment is something foreign to them. How do they handle it?
So really the diversity, to me, the whole point is to bring empathy into play.
Yes.
We all have empathy, but sometimes you need to have a little perspective in someone else's life to bring it into play. And if you want to see officers cry, the exercise she does where they write down the 4 most important things in their lives on 4 slips of paper, then we come around and grab one. And we use that to explain that when you are having to work through a mental illness, things that you care about deeply are taken from you, not your fault. Just the ability to trust what your brain tells you.
Can I say something about that? And it's still, I deal with it every day. I still struggle with relying on my mind. I have to sometimes ask people for their opinion just to make sure that I'm thinking the right thing, and it's a part of having accountability also, but I still, deal with not knowing whether to trust my thoughts, and I really, it's a tough thing because I'm a person who, I know what I want, but to not be able to readily, take my thought and run with it, I still struggle with it, and I'm trying to learn.
We should all be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of us should be trusting how we take our
Okay.
take on something. We all have biases, preconceptions.
That's right.
So what you're doing is what we all ought to be doing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's a healthy
Yes.
thing
Yes.
to do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
accountability. Interacting with the group to make sure we're all seeing the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Dr. Dionne Show here on Gwinnett Business Radio X. I'm joined by Miss Lori Brickman, Miss Kasha Gold, and also Captain Jay Eisner. We're actually coming close to the end of our show, but I wanted to actually continue with one more question regarding the diversity. One of the statistics I actually read on the NAMI site was that African Americans and Hispanic Americans use mental health services at about 1/3 the rate of Caucasian Americans. And I think that goes to the stigma that's attached a lot in some communities. And so I applaud you, Kasha, for speaking
Thank
up
you.
about your situation, because I know in our community
Yes.
that if you show any kind of weakness, quote unquote weakness, then somehow you're stigmatized, and somehow and people think you're weak, and I think that mental illness it's on the spectrum, and I think depression also ties into that. Now I'll share a quick story that when I lost my parents and my aunt and my uncle in a 4-year period.
Wow.
And while I was in grad school, my children were 2 and 4 years old. I was just devastated, on my knees with grief. I could not function. So where did I go? I went to counseling. And you wouldn't believe, you went to counseling? Really? Why did you go to counseling? And going to counseling and seeking help is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
It's not weakness.
Yes, it is.
And so I'm hoping that our listeners are going to be inspired by your
Yes.
story, and realizing, you know what, that there's no shame in this.
Yes.
And we have to take care of our mental health.
Definitely.
And if you don't take care of your mental health, then you are no good to anybody else and to
Exactly.
yourself. And so I really appreciate
Thank
you and everyone coming here today to talk about the work that you're doing. And let's continue the awesome, fantastic work you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank
I
you
wanted
for
to
bringing it
mention,
to the forefront.
I do see a therapist and a psychiatrist on a regular, and I actually found so much joy in seeing a therapist, because I was always writing, journaling what I was going through. I didn't really talk about things I would go through too much, but therapy helped me to learn how to express myself a little bit more and just talk through what I was going through and things like that. And I used to hide my face, going to the doctor's office. Like, I don't want anybody to see me going into the doctor's office, a psychiatrist and a therapist, But I can say that anybody, it's okay. Seeing a therapist it can be amazing, and don't be afraid or feel like it's shameful. And I understand how I can feel, but it helped me. It really has helped me a lot. So
Great.
Thank you.
Helped
for
me a
that.
lot too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
you.
And just talking about it in the community, each and every place we go. I was at the Newark airport. I had to go to the Newark airport just last 2 weekends ago, and the Uber driver was African American. And on our way to the airport, I slipped in, what I do. He says, well, how was your trip to New York? I said, it was awesome. I said, and I can't wait to get back to what I do. That's my lead in, right? So he said, well, what do you do? I said, well, I work with law enforcement and teaching them about mental illness and disabilities. I said, how do you feel about that? He said, I don't trust cops. I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, a lot of times they don't understand my neighborhood, and I'm fearful of them, and I'm on the defense. And he went on to tell some stories. I said, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Would you mind if I shared what we're doing? Went on, talked about CIT, the training, and how we're trying our very best to partner with law enforcement, and what a great job they're doing in learning these skills and going out and utilizing them in the workplace. He drops me off at the airport. He goes around to my trunk. He takes my luggage out. He said, may I give you a hug? I said, of course. He said, I'm going to be honest. At the beginning of the ride, I was only thinking about my experience, and I still have feelings about that. I said, I appreciate that. He said, but you've enlightened me, because I never thought about the other side. So we're all here to learn more and do more.
Yes.
I just wanted to share, Kasha, about the strength it takes to go to therapy, and how and that wall is found like chromium in law enforcement too. That you can't show weakness by getting help, But if you're getting ready if you're a weightlifter, getting ready for a competition, you go to a professional trainer to help get you in shape.
Yes.
The same thing for us in law enforcement. We deal with a lot of difficult things. So why wouldn't you go to a specialist who knows how to help you process through this? And so I was sharing, I've benefited greatly from seeing a therapist. I used to work in a homicide unit. That was really hard. I probably could have muddled through on my own, but why not let someone help me process through it faster, more effectively,
Absolutely.
and limit the harm that this difficult stuff does to me or my family.
Would you mind if I shared? Well, here we are on air, so I'm going to share it. We're in class. We've had classes. We spend a half a day talking about officer self-care with all they have to go through each and every day. We spend a half a day talking about self-care. And we have had wonderful leaders who have actually gone on speakerphone and made appointments with their employment assistance program, showing themselves as a role model for the other officers. We want everybody to be safe.
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes, okay, so that person
you.
just happens to be to my right.
Okay, so Lori, you mentioned a NAMI, the NAMI Walk coming up. Would you want to share with the listeners?
Oh, yes,
about the
we're
walk
very excited. It's going to be at Grant Park on Saturday, October 8th. To walk is free. We're hoping to get hundreds and hundreds of people. We hope to raise $175,000. For the very first time, we're having teams of CIT officers from around city of Atlanta, DeKalb, everywhere. Yeah. They're going to come in their own team, tees and whatnot. Our goal is to increase, of course, awareness for our community of NAMI and of our CIT training. Please, if you have questions, you can email NAMI Walks, NAMIWALKS at NAMIGA.org. And we are very excited about the walk.
And that information will also be on the Dr. Dionne Show webpage on Gwinnett Business RadioX. And any more information in terms of Twitter, people to follow you, get in touch with you?
Well, I can give you my Twitter. It's at Lori D. Brickman. We would all love at any point in time, anyone who is interested in joining our efforts to call us, tweet me, email me, call me. I get calls every day from people who want to help, who need help and who want to help. My own team is the Caked Crusaders. Our theme this year is Be a Georgia Mental Health Hero. So in honor of my 60th, see, I'm outing something about myself. In honor of my 60th birthday, my team is called the Caked Crusaders. So I'm hoping people will donate something or just come out and walk with us. Join hands with us, walk with us on the 8th.
And I'll be out there with you.
Yay.
Yes.
I'll be there also.
Great.
Awesome.
Any information you'd like to share with the viewers about yourself?
I really just, again, the NAMI website I think is the way to go to connect with people who are walking through this with you. Cash, are you a peer counselor?
No, I'm not yet.
Oh,
one of the most important things I've seen as I've been with people who have been working through their illness is peer counselors who, doctors are absolutely vital, but someone who's been through it, means so much. And just you being here on the air,
yes.
I know someone's hearing you. Someone's hearing you.
I just visited the Decatur, the Peer Support and Wellness Center in Decatur. Their programs are free. It's a 24/7 warm line. There's so many wonderful opportunities for peer support. Okay. What you've done has been amazingly impactful.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I appreciate the three of you joining me today on the debut episode of the Dr. Dionne Show. Thank you so much for your contributions. I hope our listeners have benefited from... I'm sorry.
I want to plug my website.
I apologize. Go on ahead.
I'm sorry. So my website is CassiaGold.com. It's CASSIA Gold GOLD.com for any information if you want to find me somewhere.
And did you mention your fashion show?
In the fashion show, yes, October the 1st. That's a week before the walk, the NAMI Walk, in Hobie Studios, HOBI Studios near Grant Park. Starts at 7 p.m. You can get tickets on eventbrite.com and just search Green and Jean, Green A-N-D, Jean, G-E-A-N. J-E-A-N. Green and Jean. Search on Eventbrite, and the tickets are all there. So I hope to see you there.
Yeah. And
come raising awareness of mental illness and raising funds for NAMI also. This is my contribution.
Come meet Shamika Holtzclaw, our ex-Tennessee Vol and WNBA star and Olympian. Shamika Holtzclaw is going to be our honorary chair. We're so excited about that. She'll be at the walk as well.
Fantastic. So thanks again for joining us on the Dr. Dionne Show, where you listen to smart dialogue about diversity, leadership, and behavior in the workplace and beyond. Our show airs live on the second Friday of each month at 10 a.m., but you can listen to any of our shows anytime by visiting GwinnettBusinessRadioX.com. Thank you so much again to my guests, and also to executive producer Mike Salmond and producers Trey and Z for your assistance today. And before I close, I'd like to just share information about myself. If you'd like to contact me, you can find me on Facebook at actually my business at PoultonConsultingGroup.com, on Twitter at Dr. Dionne Poulton, and also on LinkedIn at Dr. Dionne Poulton. And I welcome emails. I always love to hear feedback, questions, comments, even gripes. I'm happy to engage. So I thank you for listening. And I also like to close with a call to action. Expand your circle and your mind. Let people in. Thank you.
Thank you.